And we are live on YouTube, waiting for Facebook to catch up. And Facebook is thinking about it and still thinking, and we're live on Facebook. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. This is the weekly bullet. We talk about the news of the week, and we're going to be doing an interview with Lara Smith here in just a second. Before we start that, I want to actually have my co-hosts introduce themselves because they do a much better job at it than I do. First up, Beth Alcazar. Beth, tell us everybody a little bit about you and where your media ends up.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for listening today. I'm Beth Alcazar, and I work with the USCCA, most specifically with Concealed Carry Magazine and our training department. So all the great classes and education materials that you'll find out there. And of course, pop on anytime to uscca.com to see what we're up to. You can find me and lots of other really great Second Amendment advocates writing about different product, gear, and otherwise.
All right. And Charlie. Who are you? Why should you be here? And where can people find your stuff?
We are all trying to figure that out, let me tell you. My name is Charlie Cook. I have a YouTube channel and a podcast called Riding Shotgun with Charlie. What I do is I meet people around the country. I drive them around in my car, and we talk about gun stuff, and we talk about whatever it is that these people do in the Second Amendment community. And I put the show out on YouTube, on Gunstreamer, on the Ops Lens app, and in podcast form as well. So please check it out.
All right. And then joining us for our interview today, and for at least some of the rest of the show, is Lara Smith. Lara is, well, not the founder, but she's she's the national spokesman, let's put it that way, for the Liberal Gun Club. Lara, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's begin where the first 15 minutes. Whoops, I hit the wrong button and killed Lara's window. Let's begin by talking about the Liberal Gun Club. And this is something, when I very first started podcasting almost 9 years ago, I thought there couldn't be such a thing because liberals hate guns and they want us all to be killed, and they want I've learned. But Lara, could you tell us what the Liberal Gun Club is, and the fact that there are really, honestly, a lot of pro-gun liberals?
A lot. Somewhere between 25 and 33% of liberals show that they have guns in the house consistently over years and years of statistics and polling and that kind of thing. So we are the preeminent organization in the U.S. that speaks for left-of-center gun owners in the national conversation on firearms rights, Second Amendment issues. We also have an education component, which is actually a big component of what we do. We have certified instructors. We do instructor certification, but we also teach a huge variety of firearms classes, everything from basic introduction to pistol. We have a Make It Safe class, so if you are not a firearms owner, but you have a situation where you need to know how to make a firearm that you've come across or is in your house or your neighborhood safe, we have that. Everything to a really advanced defensive pistol classes and defensive carbine classes. So we are a wide variety of different things. We also have a big online presence. We have forums, we have Discord, we have a large Facebook presence, we have Twitter, we have all of that. So that's kind of who we are.
All right. I'm going to start getting some social media posts coming in here, and we've got a lot of them coming in. But as these are scrolling by, just for the people that are on the air with me, you can interact with them. You can let them go by, whatever you'd like. I will, from time to time, be bringing a few of them up to talk about myself. And for those that are watching, if you post something that's really stupid, I'm not going to put it on the air. The the commentary that goes up on the air, I absolutely moderate. So if you want your comment on the air, keep it relevant, keep it clean, and I'll get it up. So, Laura, let's start with another diversion here among the classically liberal, from what I've learned over the past almost 9 years. Classically liberal people are all about individual freedoms of all varieties, and gun freedom is part of that.
So let me stop you there. Classically liberal, to the extent that it has become synonymous with libertarian, is not what this club is. When we say liberal, we mean liberal way left. I mean, we have everything from libertarians totally welcome in the club, and really everybody is welcome. We do moderate pretty significantly, but if you're going to be polite and interact, we're happy to have you. But our members are everything from kind of really traditional Democrats to not really neoliberal, because that doesn't believe in gun rights, but everything from really traditional Democrats to socialists to full kind of really hard left. And so our group is not, a lot of people are like, oh, you're a classical liberal. To the extent that you're thinking libertarian, I am far left of that. I am to some extent left of kind of the Democratic Party, just because I think that they like to do a lot of authoritarian things that don't really fit with the liberal mindset. So to the extent you're talking about that, yes, absolutely. More individual rights, non-authoritarian, the idea that people have the right to self-defense, that people have the right to self-determination, and that people have the right to really live in a just society. That's really where we are, and to the extent that the Second Amendment protects that, that's what our organization protects.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open this up to Beth and Charlie if you guys have any questions for Laura.
Yeah, Lara, I love how you're saying that part of your mission on education is to reach out to the non-gun owners, those who may not have guns, may never want them, may never have touched them. That is so important, I think, across the board, no matter your political ideals. I'm wondering, what are some of the experiences you guys have had with that? Do you find that people, quote unquote, convert and do decide to become gun owners because of that education?
Not all the time, sometimes. But what we found a lot is that you take a lot of the fear out of it. And once you do that, people become much more interested in the other things we talk about. So one of the things we talk about in education and in policy is root cause mitigation. You can ban all the guns you want. You're not going to solve a problem by doing that. You're not going to solve the problem you think you're solving. So we talk a lot about that, but there's a legitimate, it is not an unhealthy thing to be somewhat afraid of a firearm or somewhat afraid of a power tool. If you don't know how to use them, that's okay. That's a normal self-preservation part of being human. So what we try to do is diffuse that fear and say, look, I don't want to go use the power saw in my husband's back shed because I don't know how to use it safely. This is how we can do these things safely. And then you have people who suddenly, their views on the overall conversation change because you've taken out that really hard emotional part of it with the fear.
I think that's the best part too. That's awesome. Knowing that people may not become gun owners because of it, but maybe they're making wiser decisions and really listening to the types of bills and legislation and politic talk that's out there. So they're making, I guess, better votes and decisions across the board. I love that you guys do that.
Yeah, and that's a big focus of ours. Is really, we talk about root cause mitigation a lot. We talk about these things like, what's going to make it better? I mean, what are these things that are going to make it better? And of course, we're coming at that from a liberal perspective. So things like, why would we support universal health care? Well, it's not because we want socialism. It's because if you have universal health care, you have people who now, might be able to go improve their community by opening a small business because they can have employees, and that cost of running healthcare now isn't tied to that. We're looking at it, hey, if you have mental health care, you're getting people who maybe shouldn't have a firearm right now. Not that I'm talking about there being the government coming in and taking it, but they can make that choice of, hey, I have a safe place to put this now. Like in California, if you have a registered AR, the registration we have, the so-called assault weapon, if you have one of the ones from pre-2016, you can't even give that to your brother or sister or neighbor for safekeeping if you're having a mental health crisis. We're talking about laws like that.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. That doesn't keep anybody safer. Let's talk about that kind of thing. Those are root cause factors. That's what's going to save lives, not just banning them.
I want to get to a comment that just came in on social media. Sean said, and understand, Sean, Lara doesn't speak for the Democratic Party, but he says how much the Democrats drive to ban guns is a result of a desire to stick it to gun owners who are stereotypically conservative.
Basically none. This doesn't come from a drive to stick it to conservatives. This comes from a legitimate, and I talk about this a lot when I go talk to conservative groups. If one side is telling you that you are evil for being a Democrat, and there's a congresswoman now who wrote an article who said I was her enemy because I was a Democratic woman. That's a problem. If that's the side you're hearing, if you don't know anything about guns, if you're not a gun owner, and you hear that from one side, and the other side is these are going to kill your children and the children of your neighbors, what side are you going to go to? It's a lack of knowledge and a misunderstanding of how do you solve the problem to keep people safer. And it is partially this kind of authoritarian push that we see kind of both sides of the aisle like to do this. This is not just a Democratic fault by any stretch of the imagination. In various different things, we see, I'm going to get into your house, your bedroom, your safe, your school, I'm going to ban this book because it's not my religion. I'm going to ban this gun because I don't understand it. I'm going to ban these sexual practices because I don't like them. I'm going to do all these things. Both sides do all these crazy things, right? It's that drive. It's not, I hate the other side. It's not that. That should have no place in American discourse at all. That we need to be, that is not the problem. We can disagree on how we should govern certain things. We should not disagree about whether we're Americans and whether all these rights apply to both Americans, to both Americas, right? Depending on your party, there shouldn't be a both Americas. There are Americans, done.
Just a couple minutes before we get to the rest of the show, and we'll probably extend the interview segment because we're getting a lot of great comments. But one thing I'd like you to bring up, Lara, you've touched on it before, but could you get into a little bit more about the education that liberal gun clubs does? Because that is, I'm going to be speaking with a broad brush here, and it's probably going to be misinterpreted, but you're talking at a segment of the population not traditionally known to use firearms a lot, and the education is really, really important.
I think one of the ways we talk about this is when you hear a gunshot in the middle of an inner city, that's a really different thing than when you hear a gunshot somewhere out in a more rural area on hunting land, right? Those mean people are having two entirely different things when you have that. And so our education is for people who, well, it's for everybody, but a lot of our education and our focus is for people whose only time they've ever seen a firearm is on the hip of a cop when they're having a bad day. And there are certain gradations of that, right? If you are poor inner city youth, that's a whole different bad day than being me getting a traffic ticket, right? But that's a real thing. There's people who've never seen these because it's not part of the culture. It's not, the only time they see them used is movies. John Wick is kind of the pretend, but in real life you only see them when it's something not good's happening. And so our education is to talk about one of the things David Yamane says, right? Guns are normal. To talk about, hey, your neighbors like me. I'm not the stereotype. Your neighbors who look like me or my friends who are a big, broad, pretty international group, we own firearms. We use them safely. We believe that we have these rights to them, but we also talk about not just the self-defense and the self-determination idea, but the fact that firearms can be fun. We talk about competition and target shooting, and we have a bullseye competition. We have a big training component. One of Amy Dillon comes and teaches for us every year at our annual. We have a big training component of that. We have competitors who wear our jerseys. We have training jerseys, right? We do all of that to show people firearms they're not just for a bad day. And I think that's something that we in the gun community should do more of.
Okay. Go ahead, Charlie.
Thanks. I think it's kind of interesting. I live here in Massachusetts, and of course a large number of people here are left-leaning and liberal Democrats and whatnot. And when I teach classes, I know I have to be super careful about how I phrase things. So I try to tell people we have the pro-gun folks, we have the non-gun folks, and we have the anti-gun folks. And I try not to say, well, the Republicans want this, the Democrats want this. It's the pro-gun folks, the non-gun folks, and the anti-gun folks. And I will tell you this: I got a message this week from one of my colleagues at one of the gigs I have, and he's been asking me for several months now about getting his gun license. And he's a musician. He said he's very liberal about a lot of things. And he messaged me this past week, and he said, "Would you be interested in teaching a liberal how to shoot?" And of course I replied, "Well, are you going to shoot Republicans and conservatives?" And he said, "I want to be able to protect myself." I said, "That's a good answer. I've got a class next Saturday. I'll see you then."
Yeah, and we certainly do those classes. I mean, we actually are, Charlie, I don't remember what it's called in Massachusetts. The abbreviation in California here is CCW. We're actually accredited to teach that class in Massachusetts, and we do put that class on and teach liberals who, because lots of people now want to protect themselves. I think this past year has shown that. I mean, the people who bought firearms this year are not the stereotype. And I think that's going to change the conversation a lot, because I think there's going to be new voices and new concerns in the firearms community. But I also think there's going to be new voices that are being heard by the politicians, and I think that's important.
I need to get
here in Massachusetts. Go ahead.
I need to get just a couple of comments in here because they are really flying. Andrew says, and as soon as I hit it, it left me.
Here it is.
Okay, if somebody could read that, because I don't have it on my screen anymore.
Well, it says, Laura, would you say...
Sorry, is the focus to have more pro-2A Democrats? No. Well, not specifically. The Democrats are a different thing, right? I would not call myself a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat only because in California I need to be for primary voting. I wasn't before I moved here. But I've always been liberal. I mean, I've always been left. But I don't... So that's different, right? The party is different. But I think the focus is to make the 2A understandably to people truly a universal right. That this is not just a right that people who are more conservative talk about and have. And I will tell you that is a problem on both sides of the aisle. You see that on both sides of the aisle is, when I talk, and Paul, I don't know if we've seen any, I'm not watching comments right now, but a lot of times when I do an interview like this, I'll get she shouldn't have guns. Liberals don't deserve to own them. Liberals, one comment that got put on a Breitbart article was, the only good liberal is a dead liberal. Let's start with her. Like, that doesn't help our gun rights. No. But also what doesn't help our gun rights is Shannon Watts, right? That's a problem too. Those are both legitimate problems from the opposite sides. Our focus is the Second Amendment's a universal right. And so when we want millions of new gun owners, I don't really care what your politics are around owning a firearm. I want you to be safe. I want you to be educated. I want you to keep your family safe when you have that firearm. And I also don't want the government to make rules that make it harder for you to be safe. That's a real problem.
And I want to bring up there, and to be honest, to answer your question, we've had quite literally hundreds of comments in the few minutes, we've been on the air for 19 minutes, 20 minutes almost. We've got over 100 comments between the platforms we're on. I'm only putting a very select few up if they're relevant to what we're talking about, and if they're respectful. There's people commenting out there that are. God bless them. I'm glad you're watching. Let's leave it that way.
And I should say, I don't mind that personally. It's fine. That's part of, and you all know this. It's part of putting yourself out there as part of this. Is that we get comments. I mean, God knows, Shannon Watts and I have had it out on Twitter more than once, right? I mean,
right.
That's fine. I don't mind that personally. I do think it's harmful for our rights to have a mindset like that, and that's my problem with it. Is it is harmful for everybody's rights? It's not that it's focused on a person. So think of that, right? What are how we're perceiving these things, left and right, harmful or helpful to our constitutional rights for everybody in the U.S.? I try to keep that focus when I'm doing this, and when I'm doing interviews, and when I'm going and talking, and when we're doing our lobbying and thinking about how are we going to lobby? How can we do that in a way that's going to expand everybody's rights the most?
Absolutely. I want to, and Lara, we're going to be keeping you out. You just let me know when you need to go. We're going to,
okay.
But I want to shift the discussion a little bit because we're already late on when I normally do this. But I want to talk, and I'm going to put this camera on me for just a second. I want to talk to everybody out there. Period. The Second Amendment community is largely conservative and is up in arms about election results and what has happened over the past, let's say, month and a half. I want to reach out to each and every person watching, everybody who's concerned about the election and what's going to be happening next week, and I want to beg you a couple things. Number one, this weekend and throughout next week, please think and don't do anything stupid. I'm going to encourage you not to attend any protests. I'm going to beg you not to attend anything billed as an armed protest. There are a lot of, I'm going to say, fake memes. There's a lot being put up by, I'm going to guess, people who want to stir things up and are putting armed protest at the Capitol, and we're talking the one in D.C., on X day, or at every state capitol on Y day and time. Folks, going to these kind of protests right now is not the smartest way to fight for our rights. And you could be doing more harm. No, let me scratch that. You will be doing more harm than you will good if you go up to any protest with an AR strapped to your back. We need right now, the most expedient way right now, we are going to keep our rights and advance our rights, and that can be done, is twofold. Number one, we need to fight legally, and that's where my boss comes in. And that's where other groups come in. But my boss, Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation, even today, it hasn't been announced yet, but I know it's coming. Today there's going to be another lawsuit filed. Right now we're going to be gaining a lot of our rights back and expanding our rights through lawsuits. The other way is education, and you can do that by doing what you're doing now. Going back, for example, Gun Rights Policy Counselors, the last 3 years is available online. You watch that. You can read books. But educate yourself. Get smarter about what you're doing. And thirdly, is you can call or write your senator or congressperson. Or we remember, folks, when we went through Sandy Hook, everybody thought, and it was this close to really happening, there was going to be a semi-auto ban. Everybody thought it was coming. We fought it. We were successful. we can do that again. We're in for a fight the next 2 years, but that fight does not get helped by you going out to Washington, D.C. without a permit, strapping an AR to your back, and getting arrested. That's not going to help anybody. I'm going to go ahead and open this back up to anybody that wants to comment on that. And holy cow, I've got a whole crap ton of comments coming through.
Yeah, and Paul, let me talk about writing to your congresspeople. There's a lot of ways you can do that. You can make phone calls, you can send letters, but the most important part of that is to be respectful when you do it, because that helps more than anything. So Liberal Gun Club's actually starting a postcard writing campaign. We're sending a postcard out to all of our 5,000 paying members, and anybody else who wants one can get one. You can order it through our shop, and we're going to use those to have everybody write to their congresspeople or to their state legislatures if they have something going on, and to say, look, please focus on these things that now that we have, where we are, please focus your political capital on the things that can actually help the problems. Let's look at root cause mitigation. We're going to give a link to our page on www.theliberalgunclub.com. There's a page that links to root cause mitigation. You can see what we talk about there. Those are great points to bring up. If you can hook something else that they're interested in instead of doing something rude, that more than anything else helps us, because it gives an alternative and it gives an idea of what really helps. Give them those ideas so they have something to work on. But right, absolutely.
And I think I said this kind of behind the scenes while we were at this very issue. Just by not being there physically or having a physical presence doesn't mean you're not doing something. By avoiding a situation that could potentially be dangerous or could potentially be perceived in a way that you didn't intend, I mean, that's a smart decision to avoid that and to try something that hopefully is going to be beneficial for all of us. Being there physically is not needed right now under these circumstances. Doing what Lara said and doing what Paul said and just what all of us as 2A advocates really believe, by continuing to fight this fight and stand for this mission in other ways, does not invalidate who we are and what we've done and what we've accomplished. In fact, I think it adds to our level of professionalism, and it may even get more attention. The fact that we avoided the temptation to be emotional or to be rash or to do something irrational or spontaneous, and rather unified and came together with these different types of communication. It doesn't mean you can't take your own platform on your own Facebook page, or by all the things we just said, writing those letters, making those phone calls, and doing things locally. Making a difference in your local community and with your local government is so important right now. And I've always said, you're going to have to be the pebble in the puddle, because, your little rock thrown into the wide ocean of Washington, D.C. might not even look like it's making any difference at all. But if you take your little pebble and you throw it into the puddles of your own local communities, you're going to see a ripple effect. So please stay focused on that, especially during this time.
Beth, you are a great wordsmith. You really are. The pebble in the puddle. I love it. I wrote it down. I dig it.
Oh, yay!
I do think we do have to be careful about all of this, because there are folks that want to prove that we're these crazy radical off the wagon lunatics that want to start a civil war, and I hear you and I get you. I'm less than thrilled with how things are going, of course, like many of us are, and going to one of these things is probably really not a good idea. It sounds great. It's a lot of good vibrato and all that, but yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gun websites just said on social media, I look to liberal gun owners to offer new positions and awareness, not simply standing with gun owners the same old messages, but now with liberals too. We need the added point of view of the liberal.
Yeah, I mean, and our point of view, and like I talked about before, our focus is a little bit different. Our focus is from a different viewpoint of what are we talking about. And it's an interesting position to be in, right? Because I'm walking into, when I go to, a local rep's office or to a congressperson's office, I'm walking in and saying, hey, I agree with you on 90% of this stuff or 99% of this stuff, but this one thing, you have it wrong. But I can't just go in and say you're an idiot. I have to say, hey, I think you need to think about this a different way. Here's a solution. That's so much more important, is to give them a solution that they like. And that's what our job is. That's what my group's job is. And for the politics side, right? From the education side for the other people, it's, can I take the fear out of it for people who don't know this? Because remember, there's things that we all don't know. We just didn't grow up with it. I mean, if you grow up in an inner city, your universe of knowledge is completely different than someone who grew up on a farm somewhere. And the person who grew up on a farm somewhere, universe's knowledge is completely different than someone who grew up, say, on a sailboat in the Caribbean, right? We all have these different backgrounds that make our universe and our understanding of our world. And we need to look and find what those perspectives are and reach for those perspectives that might not be ours. And we, as a community, that's really going to help us.
Absolutely. I'm going to add one more from Pete here. And I got to say, some of these, we're getting comments left and right and center, but some of the comments, I ought to be giving these people commission checks for doing part of my job for me. The liberal activists from California have offered more to our discussion in the last few months than the last years of echo chambers the 2A activists have made available. So I agree. I think we need to add people to the conversation to welcome people in, because the traditional view of a gun owner is an old, bald, white guy. And there's so much more than that out there.
And some of us have hair, just a little bit.
And I think it's important to know that there's someone out there in the gun community that will talk to you, no matter how you're coming at this, right? I mean, Beth and Charlie and Paul and I all have really different backgrounds in this community, but, you can reach out to us. We're all out there. We're all out on social media. You can say, hey, I have a question about something you said, and we'll try to talk to you about it. We do that. That's part of our jobs. There's Kevin Dixie, there's Rob Pincus, there's Sarah Hauptman and John Hauptman. There's, all these people. There's Shelley, there's all these great people. There's Amy Dillon, right? I mean, her background's completely different than all of ours. There's Amanda Seffico. All these are people with really different backgrounds that will go out and talk. There's who's the girl who's doing that amazing new website? Gun Girlfriend, is that her name? That she does that. She's a wonderful woman, and I might have her name wrong, but she does amazing stuff, and she is out there doing this incredible education she's another liberal. I think she's out as a socialist. I think I may be wrong about that, and I don't want to say that's true without knowing that 100%. But she's doing some really amazing stuff out there. Mm-hmm. Like, there's all kinds of people. There's Armed Equality. There's Armed Margins, which is a fabulous, fabulous Facebook page. He's doing some really good stuff. Actually, they are doing some really good stuff. There's all kinds of groups. So if you are new, or you want to know, or you want to say, I don't understand why you like these at all, how can you do this? Reach out to us. We'll answer that question. And if your question is, hey, I really want to learn, but I'm scared, I'll teach that class with you. I'm happy to go take you out there, and we don't have to fire a gun. We can just talk about it. I mean, I'll take my CERT trainer out with you, and it's a laser. It's an inert. There's literally nothing that goes bang on it. If you want to learn that level, I'll do that. Be out there, be at the level that people are at, and welcome that level, because if they're asking at all, that's important.
I want to really promote a good friend of mine and somebody who's been commenting, and you've already brought up, Lara, and that's Sarah Hauptman. her and John have the Guns Guide to Liberals, and
Yeah.
it is one of the comments that has come through multiple times. I didn't get in time. Was, oh, how do we talk to somebody who doesn't have the same political idea as I am? What you need to do is go find on your favorite podcast software Guns Guide to Liberals and listen to that. It's a master class in communication. I want to pump that out just for people that are looking to open communication slots, because there's nothing I know any better than that series.
And I just saw one of Sarah's comments scroll by for open source defense. Also another excellent resource. I'll second her on that as well.
And go ahead, Charlie. I'm going to run some more comments. Go ahead.
All right. I was just going to say, when you're talking about gun safety, there really isn't politics involved. A safe direction is a safe direction. It doesn't matter what your political persuasion is, or your sexual preference, or your gender identity, or whatever, your height, your race, religion. Doesn't matter. A safe direction is a safe direction. Finger off the trigger is finger off the trigger. Check to see if the gun's unloaded is check to see if the gun's unloaded. None of this stuff has anything to do with politics. And I noticed when I do classes and I talk about magazine capacity bans and all this sort of crazy stuff. Again, like I said, we got the pro-gun folks, the anti-gun folks, and the non-gun folks. And then at some point, it's just safe direction. Here's how you load. Here's how you check it. Pull the slide back. Push the slide stop up. Hit the magazine release. Pull the charging handle back. There's no politics involved. There's no politics involved in the gun safety stuff. So it's
well, I love that, Charlie, too, because how many times I've had more liberal friends or folks that are voting differently than I do or think differently than I do, and they've approached me and asked me about me teaching them how to use a firearm safely or store or stage a firearm safely. And I've actually had people question me, well, if you're going to teach a class, let's imagine you're going to teach to a bunch of liberals, how would you do that? And my answer is like the same way I teach all of my classes. So what you're saying is inherently just what all of us need to just kind of focus on. And I think that key word really is focus. We need to be hyper-focused on the fact that we are all worth protecting. And if we can talk about that, and if we can live there, and if we can work there and teach other people those types of thoughts and processes and safety measures and fundamentals, that's where we're going to have big wins. The moment that you try to bring in every other thing that you believe in, that's where you're going to get in trouble. I mean, I don't like country music, but I don't need to say that in my gun classes, because then I'm going to turn off the people that love it. So, there's a time and a place, and we have to be hyper-focused on the Second Amendment so that we can be unified in the Second Amendment. And no matter your background, no matter what you're doing now, no matter who you're voting for or who you did vote for, we can still protect what is inherently all of ours, and that right to self-defense.
You say you don't like country music. What's next? You don't like pineapple on pizza? I mean, come on.
I don't. I'm sorry. Let's bring that in. See, we're not hyper-focused anymore.
So
I'm going to go with...
I said you're going to write down that Beth doesn't listen to country music. I'm going to say Beth listens to gangster rap. That's what I wrote down. Go ahead, Lara. I cut you off.
I was going to say I'm just going to try to avoid the pineapple on pizza argument altogether, and right, because as much as I don't want to know how you feel about that in my gun class, I also don't really care who you voted for. Like, that's not what I'm doing when I'm teaching a gun class. Do I care about it when I'm lobbying? Sure, but do I care about it when I'm teaching you safety to a firearm? Not at all. No, I don't care about that when I'm teaching a gun class. It doesn't matter.
And I mean, I get it. That's really hard to do. It's hard to compartmentalize that when we're very emotional creatures and everything affects everything, especially as women. That's the way our brains work. I mean, we teach that, men's brains are more like waffles and women's brains are more like spaghetti. For us, everything is interconnected and it all just ties in together, and it's hard to make them separate and put them in different pieces like a man naturally, usually has the ability to do. But I mean, that's just it's a must. It's a must have. We have to compartmentalize this and focus on the benefits to all without tying in all those little nuances or differences or issues that could potentially tear us apart or change our minds. And Lara, that's one reason I love the DC Project so much, because I have never in my life ever been in an organization that combines the most diverse group of women imaginable in one place in a way that's unified and empowered and meaningful, because we're all fighting for and supporting the same thing, that natural born right to protect ourselves. And it's an incredible feeling. And yeah, we could probably get in 1,000 arguments if we decided to get into pineapple on pizza and country music, but we don't. We continue to fight the fight.
Waffles?
Exactly.
Really?
Yes, waffles, Charlie. It's a compliment. I love waffles.
We are
Oh my
getting,
gosh, a lot of great comments are going by.
yeah, we are getting some really great comments coming in. And I got to say, Beth, you touched off a firestorm. I'm only going to let a few of them through, but with your country, I mean, we got some country music fans out there, I'm telling you.
I'm sorry.
Ilya finally posted the right. Tactical Girlfriend is the website that I was trying to remember. She's the other one who's doing really amazing instruction. Who's a very different new voice in the gun world. Very, very interesting person. And great, really good content.
All right. Well, we've got about 18 minutes left. I want to take one more little turn here, and I want to talk a little bit about what we can expect to see over the next several weeks from the federal government and from state governments. I've been writing a lot about this on the Gun Mag, and I want to focus on the states, and then if we have time towards the end, we'll go to the federal, because we really don't know a whole lot about what's going to happen federally, other than it's probably not going to be great. But states are really breaking two ways. Both Nebraska and Montana are pushing for Second Amendment sanctuary status for their states, for the whole state, meaning that the state funds or personnel will not be enforcing federal gun regulations. We've got states such as Utah and Montana that are going full constitutional carry, although in Montana I was cautioned that it's not constitutional carry here, it's permitless carry, because our Constitution has the right to bear arms in it. It's just that it doesn't allow concealed carry, because back then, in the 1800s, a real man carried a gun on his hip where everybody would know about it. But we've got good and we've got bad stuff coming from the states. Go ahead, Charlie.
I just want to say I like reading the old books, the old gun instruction books, and Bill Jordan in his book No Second Place Winner said something along the lines of why would you want to carry concealed, or why would you want to put a gun in your pocket, or why would you want to carry inside your waistband? And to me, it's a nice little flash of the history of gun ownership and carrying a gun, because I mean, Bill Jordan was back in the 50s. He was a Border Patrol agent, and they didn't do that back then either. I mean, if you would take one of those guys, if you'd take not necessarily Jeff Cooper, but Jeff Cooper's old school and a lot of stuff. If you take him and say, hey, listen, we carry inside the waistband and appendix carry, and we have, not only do we have women carry guns, but they carry them under their dresses on some Spanx and a thigh holster. It's completely different than the way people used to think.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Couple other, I want to talk, and I just wrote an article that hit today up on the gunmag.com, and that is Oregon is really having issues. It looks like the only way to stop several really, really nasty anti-gun measures, the only way to stop that is for the legislature to walk out like they did last year. But walk out for almost the entire session. And in order to do that, the people walking out have to leave the entire state. Otherwise, they could be arrested.
So Paul, I'll tell you, our organization in Oregon 2 years ago now, I think, had some really good success going in and targeting some of the bills that were awful then, and saying, hey, these are problematic, and here's why, and here's how they're going to hurt your constituency. And I would anticipate that we're going to do that again, but we could use backup. I mean, we're still small enough. People going in on the left side or who are from more politically neutral organizations, going in and talking to the people on the left in Oregon was really effective. And hopefully it can be again. We didn't kill everything, but we definitely got it to be not as awful as it was. There are a couple, and I will tell you, I don't remember their names. There are a couple of willing to listen to you people in the Oregon legislature. And so to the extent that it's bad, we do need to, if people can find ways to get boots on the ground there, that's a good thing to do.
Well, and that's another
because
thing.
they're
That's another thing you guys do that I think is so important, because I'm going to use national names because I don't know Oregon names. But who's more likely to get in to talk to Nancy Pelosi, Paul Lathrop or Lara Smith? I guarantee it ain't Paul Lathrop. I think that the liberal gun club and liberals in general who are Second Amendment activists can do a huge service by getting to those who are willing to listen.
Yeah, but
I think
just
right
for
now
other
too,
people
across
listening
the
here.
board.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I was
Lara.
going to say
You
to
first.
Beth, yeah, people across the board. I mean, I think people across the board, reach out to the people you don't expect to be the ones reaching out to. If you're only reaching out to the more conservative politicians, we're not helping. We have to start reaching out across the board, and we have to start reaching out, again, what I was talking about. You have to go with solutions. You can't just say this bill is terrible. You have to say this bill is terrible because it affects your constituents in a way you don't anticipate. Here's what's going to happen. If you walk into a state legislature and you say, you are going to harm the woman who is at her sister's house because her husband has beaten her up, and now this bill that you just created means that if he comes to the house and they try to use a gun in self-defense, they're going to be criminals. That may be something that Democratic legislator who isn't a gun owner and who doesn't have our frame of reference on it didn't know. Go in with, this is the problem. The problem isn't you're infringing on my Second Amendment rights. The problem is you're creating this specific bad situation for people who are your constituents.
Okay. Beth, what were you going to say?
Yeah, kind of going with that, it humanizes the problem too, Lara, and that's really important for us to be able to make headway with a lot of folks. I mean, all of us in the community, the firearms community, we love to say, it's my natural born right or my God-given right, or however you want to phrase that, as far as being able to protect your life and the lives of those that you love. But not everyone is going to really understand that or care about that per se, but being able to humanize it and say, this is affecting those who maybe are in a poor socioeconomic state. This is affecting a woman who is a single mom who has been threatened by her ex-husband. This is affecting, putting those real faces and those real people in there is, I think, going to make a huge difference. And what I was going to say earlier, I advise everyone to just be very aware of what's happening around them locally, because there are some folks who have been very emboldened by what's been going on politically and are trying to push things through, maybe when we're distracted or maybe because they feel it's a good idea. I mean, just as an example, here in Alabama, we have hot off the press as one of the first gun control bills that looks like it's trying to, I guess it's getting filed, is basically something that will force gun owners to lock up firearms basically 24 hours a day unless you are actively hunting or target shooting. And as all of us know, who is that going to greatly affect? The people Lara just talked about. It's going to affect the woman with the restraining order or the, I don't know, the young man who's been threatened because of his own political choices or lifestyle choices. It could affect the grandmother or the widow or the widower. It could affect all those people, the disadvantaged or the minorities or the regular everyday folks who are providing votes for these representatives. So make sure that they understand that they are not actually doing good for the community by taking away our opportunities and our availability for protecting ourselves and loved ones. And they're certainly not keeping criminals from doing bad by telling law-abiding citizens we got to lock up our guns 24/7.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to make one. I want to, because it's hit the social media commentary a couple times. I write for the Gun Mag. It's at www.thegunmag.com. Apparently, if you try to go to gunmag.com, you get something entirely different. So, yeah. Just a quick aside and just a little humor here. I love Rick Hector, and he has the Legally Armed in Detroit. Don't ever abbreviate it and go to laid.com. That just doesn't work. So,
see, Paul, it's taken us 50 minutes before someone made it a possible inappropriate remark, and it wasn't me.
It was me. It sure was.
Of course.
I usually do it in about 4 minutes.
All right.
So here's something I'd like to bring up, Laura, and it's not with what Paul's trying to stay with, but as a guy that lives in a blue state, we already have a lot, and you have these things too. We have an assault weapon ban in Massachusetts, and we have 10-round magazine restrictions since September 13th, 1994. When I talk to someone that's of the liberal persuasion, they'll say, I say, hey, listen, you know what, you should have a high cap magazine because bad guys have friends, and when there's a bank robbery, there's someone in the car, and there's two guys in the there's somebody outside of the building, and there's 2 or 3 guys inside. It's weird to talk to someone that's a non-gun person and doesn't get it the way that we do, that there shouldn't be restrictions on magazine capacities, and we shouldn't have to have fixed magazines and all this sort of ridiculous stuff, because we do think that's infringement, and it's hard for me to process that you would think the same way, because we're not of the same political persuasion, but it's I don't know, man. I just get frustrated with the whole thing.
Yeah, and one of the ways I talk about it to non-gun people, because they don't see how it's an infringement. Why is this infringing? You still have a gun, you still have a firearm, you still have an AR. How is it an infringement? And so I come at it a different way. I don't talk about it as being an infringement. I talk about it as being useless. They don't do any good. If you look at places that have them versus places that don't, there's not really big differences, right? We know that these laws don't make differences. California is getting ready to be a really big example of that, right? Our MAGCAP laws are up and under review because we had Freedom Week. And guess what didn't happen? I mean, we've had a spike in crime this year because that's happened all across the entire country because of COVID. But guess what? That spike wasn't different in California because we got the magazine capacity ban disappeared and people bought millions of these, right? There's millions more in California now than there was before those 5 days. Because all the lawful gun owners went, great, I can own these. And the people who weren't lawful gun owners already had them. It doesn't. So you talk about the laws. The way I talk about it is these laws aren't making a difference. They're just political theater. Let's talk about a law that can help. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to make it harder for somebody to have a firearm? Well, that is an infringement. And then they go, well, yeah, okay, that I can see is an infringement, right? I might not like that, but yeah, okay, that's a problem. So then we talk about, well, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to keep kids safer? Let's talk about laws that keep kids safer. There's a bunch of laws we could do to make kids safer that don't have anything to do with firearms. Let's talk about those. And so the way I handle that is go even more basic, because unless you have a firearm, unless you shoot an AR, unless you have a Glock, that having a lock in it makes no sense. it just doesn't, it's not something that makes sense to you, right? It's not something that's in your brain as a problem. Explain it as a problem in a different way, and then statistics kind of help a lot with that. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I think these laws, not only are they unconstitutional, but they're just silly. They don't do anything. They don't help.
Well, and as you said before, they hurt the people the most, that the people that are generally trying to push them forward say they're trying to help.
In California, there's sentencing enhancements for brown boys. I mean, that is what they are. They create longer prison sentences for brown boys who are arrested here at insane rates compared to white kids.
Nice Car Dude 100 on YouTube says it all started with the 1934 NFA. Since then, they haven't stopped attacking the Second Amendment. Nice Car Dude, it goes back even farther than that. Everybody knows about the shootout at the OK Corral. Guess what? That was about gun control. That was the city saying you can't bring guns here. Yeah.
I have a friend that really loves the movie Tombstone, and I've certainly watched it a number of times, and he's like, oh, so many great lines, and I'm like, yeah, there are. But when you start watching it, you're like, all right, the guys, the badass guys who, are known for being handy gun folk are the ones that want to take the guns away, and they want to make sure that you don't carry here, but they're the ones that still carry. And at the beginning of the movie, it just get really frustrated. I really do. Because I'm like, these are the guys.
Are we adding that to the list of pineapple pizza and country music, and now Carly complaining about Are we putting that on the same list?
I think so. I do love Unforgiven, though, but that's probably because it's Clint Eastwood.
But of Westerns, man, it's undisputed. Silverado is by far the best Western ever produced, bar none.
All right, I will not have a pineapple pizza this weekend, but I will see if I can find Silverado.
Well, not the good, the bad, and the ugly, Paul?
That's a good movie, but man, Silverado has got such awesome stuff. One of the best lines ever in any part of cinematography is Danny Glover in Silverado saying, "I don't want to kill you, and you don't want to be dead."
There we go. Silverado's not that song by the Eagles, right?
No. And it's not a Chevy pickup, at least not one that I would own. Anyway, we are just a couple minutes from the top of the hour, and I love to keep these right at an hour. If we could, I'm going to go in reverse order from where we started. I'm going to start with Lara and work my way back to myself. I'm going to solo you out. If you would introduce yourself again and find, if somebody wants more information, let them know where they can find your stuff. Lara, you're up first.
I'm Lara Smith. I'm the national spokesperson for the Liberal Gun Club. You can find us on all social media, but the best place to find out more about our positions and what we really do is www.theliberalgunclub.com.
All right. And then that would mean Charlie. You're next, bud.
All right, I am Charlie Cook. I've got a show called Riding Shotgun with Charlie. You can find it on Facebook. You can find it on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Gunstreamer and on the Ops Lens app. And what I'm trying to do is to take the stagecoach across America and interview someone in every state. Thank you.
All right, Beth, you're next.
Yes, I am Beth Alcazar, and that's Charlie Cook. No, and I'm most likely going... You're most likely going to probably associate me with the USCCA and with Concealed Carry Magazine. You can definitely find us at the US Concealed Carry Association.com. I think that's what they've changed it to. No, it's usconcealedcarry.com, I think. I don't know why they always change things. You can also look at uscca.com. But if you're trying to find anything about me personally, about the classes that I'm teaching, or about any of the things going on with my life and my work in the Second Amendment community, please join me on Facebook with Pacifiers and Peacemakers with Beth Alcazar.
All right. And that leaves me. I am Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. I want to say thank you for watching, everybody. If you want to catch my stuff, well, you just look at the SAF, either YouTube or Facebook page. They both get my stuff all the time. You can find my stuff at thegunmag.com. And also, I do this podcast network called the Self-Defense Radio Network. You can find that at sdrn.us. We are going to shut it down from here. We're getting perilously close to the top of the hour. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week.